There is a fear almost no woman will ever admit to you directly, not because she's dishonest, but because it operates below awareness. It's not the fear most men assume. It's not fear of commitment. It's not fear of intimacy. It's not fear of being alone. Those are surface explanations. The real fear sits deeper. And once you understand it, female behavior stops feeling confusing, random, or contradictory. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The hidden fear all women carry is the fear of emotional misalignment, the fear of investing emotionally in a man who cannot hold his center, the fear of choosing wrong, not wrong morally, wrong psychologically. A man who collapses under pressure, a man who becomes dependent, a man who loses himself once attachment forms. This fear is ancient, and it shapes attraction far more than beauty, status, or words. Women are biologically wired to scan for emotional stability, not comfort, stability. Comfort can be provided by anyone. Stability is rare, and rarity determines desire. Here's where most men get it wrong. They think women fear strong men. They don't. Women fear weak stability. Men who appear confident at first, but crumble once emotion enters the picture. Men who are calm until uncertainty appears. Men who are grounded until attachment threatens their identity. That collapse is what women fear because it signals danger, not physical danger, emotional danger. Danger of regret, danger of lost time, danger of emotional entanglement with a man who cannot lead himself. This is why women test, not to manipulate, but to observe. They watch how you respond to distance, how you react to uncertainty, how you behave when attention fluctuates. These moments are not random, they are diagnostic. The hidden fear is this: will this man remain himself when things are unclear? Or will he abandon himself to secure me? Abandonment of self is the greatest red flag, because a man who abandons himself for a woman will eventually resent her, and resentment destroys relationships. Women sense this instinctively. They may not articulate it, but their nervous system responds to it immediately. Another uncomfortable truth is this: women do not fear being desired, they fear being needed. Desire feels light, need feels heavy. A man who needs a woman emotionally makes her responsible for his stability, and responsibility kills attraction. This is why women pull away when men lean in too hard, not because they don't like them, but because the fear activates. The fear that she is becoming the emotional anchor, and anchors are not chased, they are relied upon. Another layer of this fear is loss of polarity. Polarity requires difference. When a man mirrors her emotions constantly, adjusts himself endlessly, and seeks alignment at all costs, polarity collapses. Collapse feels unsafe, because desire requires movement, and movement requires two distinct emotional poles. Another deep psychological layer is this: women fear men who make them the center of their world, not because they want indifference, but because they want choice, not obligation. Being someone's entire world feels suffocating. Being chosen by someone who has a full world feels exciting. This is why women are drawn to men who are self-directed, men with purpose, men with internal direction, not men who orbit. Orbiting behavior triggers fear. Fear of responsibility, fear of emotional burden, fear of eventual collapse. Another uncomfortable truth is that women fear emotional volatility more than they fear emotional distance. Distance can be bridged. Volatility cannot be trusted. A man whose mood swings based on attention creates instability. Instability triggers avoidance. Another layer is fear of false strength. Men who posture confidence but crack under pressure are the most dangerous emotionally, because they create the illusion of safety, and illusions cause regret. Women learn this early in life, often painfully. This is why their attraction filters are sharp, and why men who try too hard are screened out quickly. Another truth most men never hear is this: women fear men who explain too much. Over-explaining signals insecurity. Insecurity signals fragility. Fragility activates caution. The man who does not need to explain himself feels grounded. Grounded men feel safe to desire. Another deep layer is emotional self-trust. Women fear attaching to men who do not trust themselves because self-doubt becomes relational chaos. If you don't trust your own direction, how can she trust it? Another uncomfortable truth is this. Women fear being the emotional leader. They don't want to manage a man's feelings. They don't want to regulate his insecurity. They don't want to be the source of his confidence. That role is exhausting, and exhaustion kills attraction. This is why women are drawn to men who regulate themselves, not men who need regulation. Another layer is fear of loss of respect. Once respect is lost, attraction cannot survive. Women fear choosing men who will lose their spine once comfort appears, because comfort tests character. The man who remains intact under comfort is rare, and rarity feels safe. Another uncomfortable truth is that women fear emotional predictability. Not predictability of values, predictability of reactions. If a woman knows exactly how you'll react emotionally every time, interest fades. But more importantly, fear of boredom appears, and boredom is death to desire. Another layer is fear of emotional ownership. Ownership feels final. Finality ends curiosity. Women fear choosing men who rush to lock things down emotionally, not because commitment is bad, but because premature commitment feels like confinement. Confinement triggers escape instincts. Another deep psychological truth is this. Women fear men who confuse intensity with strength. Intensity feels exciting at first, but without containment, it becomes chaos. Chaos feels unsafe, and unsafe things are avoided. This is why calm strength is so powerful. Calm signals control. Control signals safety. Safety allows desire to open instead of retreat. Another uncomfortable realization is that women fear being the only source of meaning in a man's life. That burden is heavy, and weight suffocates attraction. Men who have meaning beyond women are magnetic, not because they withhold, but because they are complete. This is where most men misunderstand female fear. They think women fear powerful men. They don't. They fear men without self-mastery. Men who look strong until emotion tests them. Men who appear confident until attachment threatens their identity. Men who need validation to remain stable. This is the hidden fear. And once you understand it, everything changes. Because attraction is not about proving worth. It's about demonstrating stability. Not through words, through behavior, through restraint, through emotional sovereignty. This is the foundation. Because once you understand what women fear, you stop trying to impress them and start becoming the kind of man that fear does not activate around. And when fear disappears, desire has space to grow. Quietly, naturally, without force. This is where attraction stops being mysterious and starts being psychological. And this is only the beginning. Once you understand this fear, female behavior stops feeling inconsistent. What looks like mixed signals is actually risk assessment. What looks like pullback is often self-protection. What looks like loss of interest is usually the fear activating quietly beneath attraction. Most men misinterpret this moment. They think they need to do more, say more, show more, prove more. And that reaction is exactly what confirms her fear. Because the moment you respond to uncertainty with emotional urgency, you reveal instability. Urgency says, I need this to feel okay. And need is the clearest signal that a man cannot hold his center. Another uncomfortable truth is this. Women are not afraid of being hurt. They are afraid of being trapped in the wrong emotional dynamic. Being hurt can heal. Being entangled with a man who cannot regulate himself becomes a long-term drain. This is why women instinctively pull away from men who overinvest early, not because the man is bad, but because the dynamic feels dangerous. Danger to her emotional autonomy. Another layer of this fear is loss of polarity. Polarity requires tension between two grounded individuals. When a man starts orbiting emotionally, polarity collapses. Collapse feels suffocating. Suffocation triggers withdrawal. Another deep psychological layer is this. Women fear men who make promises emotionally before they demonstrate consistency. Words mean nothing to the nervous system. Behavior does. A man who talks about commitment but reacts poorly to uncertainty feels unsafe. A man who says little but remains steady feels trustworthy. Trust allows desire to remain open. Another uncomfortable truth is that women fear men who confuse closeness with fusion. Closeness feels good. Fusion feels consuming. When a man begins to merge emotionally, losing individuality, fear activates. Because fusion predicts resentment later. Resentment predicts emotional volatility. Volatility predicts regret. Another layer is fear of emotional obligation. Women want to choose. They do not want to be responsible. The moment she feels responsible for your mood, your confidence, or your stability, attraction begins to decay. Responsibility is heavy. Desire needs lightness. Another deep truth is this. Women fear men who become different once interest appears. Men who are confident at first and then soften excessively. Men who are decisive until emotional investment begins. Men who are grounded until attachment threatens their identity. That change feels like deception, not intentional but destabilizing, and destabilization triggers caution. Another uncomfortable realization is that women fear men who are outcome dependent. Outcome dependence means your emotional state depends on her response. That places pressure on her nervous system. Pressure kills desire. This is why women often pull away when men finally open up. Not because vulnerability is bad, but because vulnerability without self-trust feels like collapse. Another layer is fear of emotional leadership reversal. Women do not want to lead a man emotionally, they want to respond. The moment she feels she is guiding, reassuring, or stabilizing you, polarity flips, and flipped polarity feels wrong on an instinctive level. Another truth most men never hear is this. Women fear men who are afraid of losing them. Fear of loss leaks into behavior. Behavior shaped by fear feels unstable. Stability is the foundation of desire. Another uncomfortable truth is that women fear men who need certainty too fast. Certainty feels good, but certainty too early feels constricting. Constriction activates escape instincts. This is why women often say, "I need space," after a man tries to define the relationship. Not because she doesn't care, but because the fear activated. Another deep psychological insight is this. Women fear men who emotionally outsource their self-worth. If her approval determines your value, she senses it immediately. And that creates pressure. Pressure shuts down attraction. Another layer is fear of emotional predictability. If she knows exactly how you'll react every time, curiosity dies. But more importantly, fear of stagnation appears. Stagnation feels like a dead end. Another uncomfortable realization is that women fear men who mistake consistency for availability. Consistency of character is attractive. Availability without boundaries is not. Boundaries signal self-respect. Self-respect reduces fear. Another truth is this. Women fear men who emotionally attach faster than they do. Speed mismatches create imbalance. Imbalance creates pressure. Pressure triggers withdrawal. Another layer is fear of being emotionally consumed. Consumption feels flattering at first, then it feels suffocating. The men women stay attracted to never consume, they connect. Connection respects autonomy. Another uncomfortable truth is that women fear men who are overly reactive to emotional tests. Tests are not traps, they are observations. Overreaction fails the observation. Calm response passes it. Another deep insight is that women fear men who seek reassurance instead of offering steadiness. Reassurance seeking signals uncertainty. Uncertainty inside you creates fear inside her. Another layer is fear of losing admiration. Admiration cannot exist without respect. Respect cannot exist without boundaries. Boundaries require emotional independence. Another uncomfortable truth is that women fear men who do not know who they are. Identity instability creates relational instability. Stability attracts. Another deep realization is this: the fear women carry is not about men being dominant. It's about men being grounded. Grounded men do not demand. They do not chase. They do not collapse. They remain intact. And intact men feel safe to desire. This is why attraction often disappears the moment a man becomes emotionally dependent. Dependence activates fear. Fear overrides desire. This is the core mechanism. Once you see it, female behavior stops feeling personal. It becomes predictable psychology. And once psychology is predictable, you stop reacting emotionally. You stop chasing. You stop proving. And you start holding your position. Because the man who does not activate fear becomes the man desire can relax around. And relaxed desire deepens. This is where everything shifts. Not because you used her fear, but because you didn't trigger it. And when fear disappears, obsession has room to grow. Quietly, naturally. As this fear quiets, something important takes its place. Trust. Not logical trust. Nervous system trust. This is the kind of trust that doesn't come from promises or words. It comes from watching how a man behaves when nothing is guaranteed. Most men never realize this is the moment attraction either deepens or collapses. Because once fear fades, the woman is no longer evaluating you. She is feeling around you. And what she feels determines everything. Another uncomfortable truth is this: women are not drawn to men who reassure them constantly. They're drawn to men who don't need to reassure themselves. Self-reassured men create emotional calm. Calm allows desire to expand instead of retreat. Another layer of this fear is emotional unpredictability disguised as passion. Many men think emotional intensity is attractive, but intensity without control signals danger. Danger to stability. Danger to long-term peace. Women learn quickly that men who feel deeply but regulate poorly become emotionally chaotic. Chaos triggers fear. Fear overrides desire. Another deep psychological insight is this: women fear men who mistake emotional expression for emotional strength. Expression is easy. Regulation is rare. A man who can feel deeply and still remain steady signals mastery. Mastery is attractive. Another uncomfortable realization is that women fear emotional entitlement. Entitlement says, I gave you this, so you owe me that. That transactional energy creates pressure. Pressure activates avoidance. The men women feel safest around give without expecting and receive without clinging. Another layer is fear of emotional volatility during conflict. Conflict is inevitable. What matters is how a man holds himself during it. Explosiveness triggers fear. Shutdown triggers fear. Grounded presence creates safety. Safety keeps attraction alive, even during tension. Another truth most men never hear is this: women fear men who collapse into logic during emotional moments. Over-explaining emotions feels like avoidance. Avoidance signals lack of emotional depth. The man who can sit with emotion without fixing it feels grounded. Grounded men reduce fear. Another uncomfortable realization is that women fear men who emotionally disappear when things get hard. Withdrawal without communication feels like abandonment. Abandonment triggers fear. The man who stays present without chasing signals security. Another deep layer is fear of emotional inconsistency. Inconsistency in values feels dangerous. Inconsistency in availability can be intriguing. The difference matters. Women fear men who shift values under pressure, not men who take space calmly. Another truth is this: women fear men who are driven by validation. Validation-driven men are unstable. They rise and fall based on approval. That instability feels unsafe. The man who validates himself reduces fear. Another layer is fear of being emotionally responsible for a man's happiness. Responsibility is heavy. Desire needs lightness. The men women feel drawn to carry their own emotional weight. Another uncomfortable truth is that women fear men who confuse vulnerability with dumping. Sharing selectively built intimacy. Dumping creates burden. Burden activates avoidance. Another deep insight is this: women fear men who seek certainty instead of direction. Certainty feels rigid. Direction feels grounded. A man with direction can handle uncertainty. That ability reduces fear. Another layer is fear of emotional collapse after commitment. Many women have experienced men who change once they feel secure. Security without self-discipline leads to complacency. Complacency erodes respect. Loss of respect activates fear. Another uncomfortable truth is that women fear men who over-prioritize them. Being prioritized feels good. Being over-prioritized feels suffocating. Suffocation kills attraction. Another deep realization is that women fear men who don't know how to sit alone with themselves. Loneliness tolerance signals inner strength. Inner strength reduces fear. Another layer is fear of emotional enmeshment. Enmeshment blurs boundaries. Blurred boundaries feel unsafe. Clear boundaries feel stable. Another truth most men miss is this: women fear men who confuse attention with attachment. Attention is light. Attachment too early feels heavy. Heavy emotions trigger caution. Another uncomfortable realization is that women fear men who don't trust the process. Trusting the process signals abundance. Abundance feels safe. Another deep psychological insight is this: women fear men who react to every emotional fluctuation. Reactiveness creates chaos. Non-reactivity creates order. Order reduces fear. Another layer is fear of emotional dependency cycles. Cycles of closeness and collapse feel draining. The man who remains consistent breaks the cycle. Another truth is this: women fear men who are afraid to disappoint. Fear of disappointing creates people-pleasing. People-pleasing erodes respect. Loss of respect activates fear. Another uncomfortable realization is that women fear men who do not have internal standards. Standards create structure. Structure creates safety. Another deep truth is that women fear men who give up too much of themselves to maintain connection. Self-sacrifice without self-respect breeds resentment. Resentment poisons attraction. Another layer is fear of emotional chaos disguised as love. Love without regulation is unstable. Stability is what women are drawn to. This is where the fear transforms. When a woman senses that a man will not collapse, not demand, not cling, not disappear, and not shift his identity, her nervous system relaxes. And relaxed nervous systems do something powerful. They open. When fear leaves, desire finally has room to move forward, not because you used her fear, but because you removed the reason for it. And that is the real leverage. Not manipulation, not control, self-mastery. This is where attraction deepens naturally, and where men stop trying to convince women to stay, because women stay where fear cannot survive. And that is only possible around men who are emotionally sovereign. This is where the dynamic truly shifts, and where the man stops chasing and becomes the place desire feels safe returning to. When fear is no longer activated, something subtle replaces it. Curiosity. Not the playful kind, the anchoring kind. This is where attraction stops being defensive and starts becoming deliberate. She no longer scans for danger. She begins to explore. And exploration only happens when the nervous system feels safe enough to move forward. Most men never reach this stage because they misread calm as permission to lean. They mistake comfort for closeness, and closeness, when rushed, revives the fear all over again. The men women feel safest around understand one thing deeply. Safety does not come from availability, it comes from containment. Containment means you can be present without absorbing. You can be close without merging. You can care without collapsing. That containment allows desire to breathe. Another uncomfortable truth is this. When fear disappears, women do not want more reassurance. They want more depth. Depth does not come from talking more. It comes from holding space, from letting moments exist without rushing to label them. Men who talk through every emotional beat kill depth. Men who allow silence create it. Another layer most men never understand is how women respond to emotional confidence during ambiguity. Ambiguity used to trigger fear. Now it triggers intrigue, but only if the man remains steady. If he becomes anxious, fear returns. If he becomes controlling, fear returns. If he becomes needy, fear returns. The man who stays grounded allows ambiguity to work in his favor. Another uncomfortable realization is that women are not drawn to men who promise safety. They are drawn to men who demonstrate it without promising anything. Promises create expectations. Expectations create pressure. Pressure reactivates fear. Demonstration feels real. Another layer is emotional pacing. When fear is gone, pacing matters more than ever. Too fast feels overwhelming. Too slow feels distant. The men women stay attracted to feel unhurried. Unhurried signals abundance. Abundance reduces anxiety. Another truth most men resist is this. Women do not want men who are always emotionally available. They want men who are emotionally reliable. Reliability is consistency of self, not consistency of access. You don't disappear, but you don't flood either. This balance keeps desire engaged without pressure. Another uncomfortable realization is that women feel safest with men who do not need emotional permission. Men who ask before every move signal insecurity. Insecurity reintroduces fear. Men who act in alignment with themselves feel solid. Solidity attracts. Another deep insight is how women respond to men who do not emotionally react to shifts. When tension increases, he does not inflate. When attention decreases, he does not deflate. This emotional neutrality creates a strong reference point. Reference points calm the nervous system. Calm allows desire to settle. Another layer is fear of emotional obligation resurfacing. Even after fear fades, women remain sensitive to obligation. If she senses that staying means carrying emotional weight, attraction weakens. Men who carry themselves remain attractive. Another truth is this. Women feel safest when a man does not make her the source of his meaning. Meaning must exist before connection. Connection then enhances it. Men who reverse this activate fear again. Another uncomfortable realization is that women fear men who chase certainty after calm appears. Calm is not a green light to secure outcomes. Calm is a sign to stay centered. Men who try to define the future too quickly revive anxiety. Another layer is emotional leadership. Leadership here is not direction. It is containment under emotion. The man who can hold emotional space without filling it becomes deeply attractive. Another truth most men never hear is this. Women fear men who do not know how to slow down emotionally. Speed amplifies anxiety. Calm pacing reduces it. Another uncomfortable realization is that fear fades permanently only when a man remains himself through every phase. Interest, distance, connection, uncertainty. Consistency across phases creates trust. Trust allows desire to deepen beyond surface attraction. This is where relationships stop feeling fragile and start feeling grounded. Not because the woman changed, but because the man did not. And that consistency is rare. Rare enough to feel safe. Safe enough to desire. This is where attraction becomes sustainable. Not explosive, not dramatic, but deep. And once attraction reaches this level, it no longer needs effort. It responds naturally to emotional stability. This is the point where men stop wondering what women want because they become the kind of man fear does not need to protect against. And when fear no longer guards the door, desire walks in on its own. quietly, confidently, without resistance. This is where the dynamic truly settles, and where attraction begins to feel effortless. Not because you controlled her, but because you mastered yourself. And there is one final layer to this. At the deepest level, this is why understanding female fear changes everything. Because once you see it clearly, you stop trying to fight attraction into existence. You stop convincing. You stop proving. You stop chasing. And instead, you remove the one thing that was blocking desire the entire time. Fear. Not fear of you, fear of what happens to a man when attachment begins. The fear that he will lose his center. The fear that she will become his emotional regulator. The fear that choosing him will mean carrying him. When that fear disappears, attraction does not need to be pushed forward. It moves on its own. This is why men who master themselves feel different. They are not louder. They are not more impressive. They are not more aggressive. They are less reactive, less dependent, less urgent, less fragile. And those absences create space. Space allows trust. Trust allows desire. Another uncomfortable truth is this: women do not need men to be perfect. They need men to be intact. Intact through uncertainty, intact through silence, intact through closeness, intact through distance. The man who remains himself across all phases becomes a psychological anchor, and anchors attract. Another realization is that fear is not something to exploit. It is something to outgrow. Men who try to use fear create tension without safety. That never lasts. Men who remove fear create safety without pressure. That allows attraction to deepen. This is why the strongest leverage is not strategy. It is self-command. When you command yourself, no one else needs to. And when no one else needs to regulate you emotionally, you become easy to desire. Another deep truth is that women do not fall for men who promise stability. They fall for men who demonstrate it quietly, without speeches, without reassurance, without demands, just through consistency of self. Another uncomfortable realization is that the fear women carry is not a weakness. It is an intelligence designed to protect them from emotional collapse. The men who pass that filter do not do so by force. They do so by not collapsing. This is why attraction feels effortless around certain men, not because those men are special, but because they are sovereign. They do not need to be chosen to feel whole, and wholeness is felt instantly. Another truth most men never hear is this: when fear disappears, desire does not explode. It settles, and settled desire lasts longer than intensity ever could. This is where relationships stop being volatile and start being grounded, not boring, deep. Another realization is that women are not afraid of love. They're afraid of loving the wrong man. The man who loses himself, the man who becomes dependent, the man who resents her for carrying him. When you remove that risk, you remove resistance. And when resistance is gone, attraction flows, quietly, naturally, without effort. This is why men who focus on self-mastery win without trying. Not because they manipulate, but because nothing inside them triggers fear. They do not need to be managed. They do not need to be reassured. They do not need to be stabilized. They are already stable, and stability is the rarest thing in modern dating. Now, if this video helped you understand the hidden fears shaping female attraction, there is one video you should watch next. Because fear is only one side of the equation. The other side explains why women become mentally and emotionally fixated on certain men once fear is gone. That's exactly what I break down in my video called Why Women Obsess Over Certain Men: Psychology of Desire. That video shows how emotional gravity forms, why restraint creates fixation, and how desire becomes self-sustaining when a man remains centered. Watch that next, because once you understand both fear and obsession, attraction stops feeling unpredictable. It becomes a natural response to who you are, not what you say, not what you promise, but how solid you remain when nothing is guaranteed. That is where real attraction begins, and that is where it stays.